Alright, James. So I wanted to send a quick video hoping to just kind of cut through all the stuff you'll find on YouTube, a lot of fluff. So when you get your baitcast reel, I believe it's this exact same one, Lew's speed spool. There's going to be two different things that you're going to want to learn to adjust. The first one is your spool tension, which is this little knob right here, this knob on the side. What that does is that adjusts how much tension is on this spool right here. Typically right out the gate you're going to want to have it just tight enough so you're going to go forward on the knob, that you really don't want any play on the spool. If you kind of hold the spool and wiggle it back and forth, you'll hear there's a little play. You're going to want to adjust that just tight enough so there's really no play. And the second way you're going to adjust that is what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tie on probably about like a half ounce weight. Some of those sinkers I sent you, you can start out with a 1 ounce if you want, but I'd start with like a ½ ounce to a 3/4 ounce weight. And what you're going to do, you're going to tie that on the end of your line. And what you want to be able to do is when you click the baitcast, the button there, and you let go, you want that weight to fall slowly. And when it hits the ground, you don't want your spool to overrun. So you really want to adjust it, especially in the beginning. You're going to want it tighter rather than looser. I'm going to kind of adjust this here till I get it kind of how I like it. So starting out probably about like this. You're going to let go, it's going to hit the ground, and you see when it hit, that spool didn't keep going. If it's too loose, and you do that, when you go like this, when it hits, you see that spool just keeps going, and that's how you get a rat's nest in your line. So that's the first thing you're going to adjust is your spool tension. Let me get it back where I want it. About like that. As you get better at casting, you can start to loosen that back a little and it'll allow you to cast a little further. But at first, you're going to want it just like that, how I showed you. Now the second type of tension is there's centrifugal brakes inside this reel, and I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can make sure this focuses on here. There's a little knob right here at the top where the level wind is. So you're going to want to pull this little knob out like that, and then this side piece will pop up. So I hope you're able to see that. Pull that out with your thumbnail and then pop this side plate up. And then when you do that, this side plate will pop completely off like that. Now on the inside, you're gonna see, make sure it stayed in focus, there's these little switches in here. What you're gonna wanna do initially is you're gonna wanna set those all out. You can kind of get them with your fingernail and you can pop them out. So there's 6 of them. You're going to want to pop them all out. What that does is it puts tension on the spool as you cast, and it prevents backlashes. So you'll start with all of those out. Now typically once you get better at it, and which in your case I'm sure is going to be very quickly, you'll start adjusting those in to allow you to cast further, because this is going to make it where when you cast it's going to start putting tension on it so you won't cast as far. But initially, accuracy and not getting backlashes is way more important than distance. So you want to start with them out, and then you can just pop this faceplate back on kind of in the same position and then just slide it down and it will pop on like that. So you've got your spool tension set, and then you've got your magnetic brake set, and then from there you're just going to cast. Starting out with the bait cast setup, your easiest cast is going to be like a side cast. With a spinning reel like you have now, more of an overhand cast is easier because you need that arc in your line. With a bait cast, it's the opposite. You don't want an arc in your line. That's what makes them more accurate, because the wind doesn't play on your lure as much. So you can do a straight line drive cast. So you're just going to have, I don't know, 6 inches to 1.5 feet of your weight hanging down from the tip of your rod. You're just going to push that button down, and you're just gonna go like this, and it's all sort of like a baseball swing. It's form over power. You don't want to try to go real hard or real fast, especially starting out. Nice and gentle. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cast, and you want to release that button right when your rod tip is pointing at what you're trying to cast at, because the line comes straight out. And what you're going to want to do is keep your thumb right there hovering on the spool. You don't need to be like putting pressure on it, because then it'll slow your line down. But with the settings that I just showed you, you really shouldn't get a lot of backlashes, but you want to keep your thumb right there, so that when your weight or when your lure hits the water, you want to have it there to just kind of stop it. So it's going to look like this. Let it go. I have a lot of brakes on there and tension that I'm not used to, so it kind of went that way, but no backlash. So you're just going to go out and you're going to practice that. As you get better, you start getting the feel for it, you're going to start wanting to take off some of those brakes. I would start with the brakes instead of the spool tension. I would leave the spool tension where it is. You're going to pop that thing back open, you know, pull that plate back off, and then just start popping. Start with one, keep practicing, pop another one in. Eventually you'll get to the point where once you're good, most guys will end up with probably 2 of them out and the other 4 in. Half and half is a pretty good mix. 3 in, 3 out. And then you're just going to keep practicing. As a general rule, when you cast, if you're getting a lot of backlashes in the beginning of the cast, like you're noticing, like right after you let go, your line goes bzzz, and you get that hairball, that's usually your spool tension. So 2 things, if you start getting that a lot in the beginning of your cast, one, you might be trying to cast too hard, so kind of ease up on your cast, and then make sure you have your spool tension set. If after you cast, your weight or your lure is hitting the water, or you're getting a hairball before it even hits the water, that's your brakes. You're going to want to set some more of those brakes out. There's a lot of other things that affect it. Wind is the number one. If you have wind in your face and you cast, the wind is slowing your lure down before it hits the water, but that wind isn't affecting your spool. So your spool's still going at the same speed as when you released it, but as the wind starts to push against your lure, that spool will want to overrun. That's where your thumb comes into play. Obviously you can adjust your brakes and your tension, but your thumb is always going to come into play. Once you get really good at this, you can have your magnetic control set real loose. You can have your spool tension set to almost free spool, and you'll be able to go out and cast it. I still don't recommend it. Even now when I get a reel, I go out and I adjust it just because it's easier. And once you get a really bad hairball, as you'll unfortunately find out, it sucks. And it takes a long time to get it out. So better to have your stuff set, but eventually you'll be good enough. You won't have to worry about it as much. But always have your thumb just right there, kind of just hovering above that line, and be ready to press it down, so that if the wind starts messing with you, or right when your lure hits the water, you're going to want to press down on that reel and stop that. But that's basically it, man. You're just going to go out and practice. I would recommend so like I said, about a 1/2 ounce weight, maybe 3/4. Go out in one of them golf course fields, or just any big open field, and just start practicing with it. Another general rule, you're never going to use a real light lure with a bait cast. You're never going to go bluegill fishing with a bait cast reel. This is typically for lures. The lightest lure you'd probably ever use is like a 1/4 ounce lure, and that's if you have like a worm on the end. But typically about a 1/2 ounce and above. If you're using real light, like you're trying to free line a worm for bluegill or stuff like that, you're going to use a spinning setup like I sent you. So really the bait cast is for jigs, lures, things like that, where you want to really be able to accurately cast. Like you saw how I was at that golf course pond and I was trying to cast right in that little grass pocket on the other side. That's where these really come into play, because you can be a lot more accurate. So all right, I hope that helps, man. Good luck.